Hi, this is Jim. Thank you for coming to my channel today. Very much appreciate it. And on this channel, we talk about business, starting businesses, running businesses, my experience in running them, and some suggestions for you. We also talk about personal finance, and then, of course, real estate. I am a real estate investor, and it has been very profitable for me, and I'll share my ideas with you. But today, we're going to talk about personal finance. You know what's interesting about personal finance is that you read these stories, I read these stories. You know, you go online and you hear about these guys, you know, they've played basketball for, 5-10 years, and they're making 20, I don't know how many millions of dollars each year. And then they get an injury, or they're no longer as talented or skilled or agile as they have been in the past. And it's not just basketball, it's football, it's sports, it's entertainment even. But then you hear about a year or so after they're done that they filed for bankruptcy and they owe millions of dollars. And it's like, didn't you guys just make like, $20 million a year or something, and now and within a year and a half you're completely broke? And I know why. I've learned my lesson in that area of being completely broke, making decent money or some money or whatever it is you want to define it as, but only to show up the night before payday and realize I don't have a dime and I got kids I have to feed and we're out of food. So these things happen, but they happen because people don't understand personal finance. They don't understand how to manage their money. Now that might sound boring to you, but let me tell you my story and how it turned around and how I became very wealthy. I consider myself very wealthy. I'm nowhere near what a basketball player makes, but I've done well, especially in real estate and businesses that I have started, things like that. And I used a lot of these principles in business that I've learned. So I look back on this time where my wife and I have struggled financially. I mean, we're not talking about little struggles, okay? We're talking about monumental struggles. I would have declared bankruptcy, but no one would have cared at that point. Let me give you an example. I remember opening the refrigerator once, and I said to my wife, I said, we only have ketchup and mustard in here. Does ketchup or mustard go bad if I turn off the refrigerator? We could save on electricity. And so that's where it got to. Now, not only that, I got the responsibility to feed some kids here. And if it wasn't for the local church down the street that would donate food for me or to us, I wouldn't have been able to feed my kids. It's not that I wasn't working hard. I was working hard. I had 2 jobs. But I had a mountain of debt. I had probably 5, 6, maybe even more credit cards, and every single one of them was maxed out. And I estimate probably owed about $40,000. So I had at that point a negative net worth of $40,000, and I have kids that I had to feed. One other thing, I got to tell you this. I remember once, this is a row home in Philly, okay? So I'm in a row home in Philly, and I remember putting 2 pieces of bread in the toaster, pushing the toaster down, and seeing roaches run out. Now, it wasn't because we weren't clean. We were clean. But when you're in a row house sometimes in Philly, all the houses have roaches, and if you kill all the roaches in your house, 2 days later, you got everybody else's visiting you. So it's kind of disgusting, and I hated the situation. I hated living in that row house, and I hated the fact that I could not take care of my kids. That's my primary responsibility, is taking care of my family. Now, I'm not going to go belly up and tell the credit card companies I'm not going to pay them, because it's also, I have a deep responsibility that if I owe you money, then I'm going to pay. And I'm going to make sure that I pay. So, with all that being said, what happened? Well, I read a book, and this is long before Dave Ramsey, and Dave Ramsey is excellent. And so if you find yourself in this situation, talk to Dave Ramsey. And I'll tell you what, if you're a multimillionaire and you're making tons of money in the NFL or something like that, or you're an actor or you're just making tons of money, you need to study Dave Ramsey. But to make a long story short, there was someone other than Dave Ramsey, and one of the things, he recommended a couple of things, but one of the things he recommended is you can't get out of debt till you find out where the money is coming from and where it's going. And that's the first step that you have to take. And so I took a piece of paper, and this was before Excel. I didn't have a computer at this point. We're talking about back in the 80s. I took a piece of paper and I drew lines down the paper. And on the left side was the date. I put dates. The first one was income, wherever I made my money from. And I did a lot of, again, 2 jobs. And one job was sort of like, one week you'd make more money, the next week you'd make less money. But I had 2 jobs, and then I would write down all my expenses on the right. Now the next thing that I was told by, I think it was Ron Blue, was the author of the book, was to figure out how much you owed. And when I added it all up, I do believe it was more than $40,000, most of it, if not all of it, credit card debt. There's probably additional debt from the 2 cars I had at the time. But one of his recommendations was the fact that you take your smallest debt and you do everything you can to pay that off first. So I looked at all the credit cards. I had one credit card that was less than the others, but they were maxed out. This one just had less max out. And so I started, if I could get $5 extra, I'd put $5 in there. Now the other thing he said, and I'm a Christian, so I believe if I owe someone something, I should pay them and not weasel out of it and blame the rest of the world and all this other stuff. I'm not a victim. So the next thing he said was, you take a percentage of what you make and you give it to the Lord. And I agreed with that. So, and my wife agreed with that. So we sat down and we said, let's get disciplined in this area. We can't use the excuse that we're poor not to give money to the Lord, because that's putting God first, which means you're not putting money first. So you can't have money as your God. It seems like when you're poor, money is more of your God than when you're wealthy. But at any rate, that's what we did. And we picked the smallest credit card we could find, the smallest balance on the credit card. And we worked really hard not to spend additional money on anything except food, taking care of the kids, and making sure we did our car payments and our rent and our electricity and things like that. And so we continued. Now at this point, I got a master's degree in business administration. I have many, many years in the Marine Corps experience in managing people and things like that. And here I am. I mean, we're struggling to feed our kids the night before payday. And the church down the street was really nice to us. They always gave us extra food. They'd have these big feasts on Wednesdays, potlucks, and they'd have leftovers, and they would give it to us, and it was pretty good stuff. And so a lot of times they would cover the lack of food by their gifts. So the idea was, though, I took that lowest bill I had, and I put extra money into that. I mean, sometimes it was extra, just $5, but I wasn't making minimum payments anymore. A lot of these credit cards, as long as you make minimum payments, they'll continue. And if you study credit card type of debt, you realize that if you continue, this can take you 20, 30 years to pay off. I don't know, 30, but it'll take you many, many years to pay off that credit card just making minimum payments. And so we decided not to put anything more on the credit card if we could. Whatever we put on the credit card needed to be paid off at the end of the month. And at the same time, extra money needed to go into the credit card. Now things started getting easier, and it started getting easier when we looked at where we're spending our money, and why we're making these decisions. We had 2 cars, and they were junk cars. So when one was broken, the other seemed to always work, and it was sort of like it would go like this. We'd fix this one, and then this one would break. And then I'd get the money for the parts, I'd fix it myself, and this one would break. And so we realized we probably don't need 2 cars. We just need 1 car. And so, you get rid of one car, you don't have to pay insurance, you don't have other responsibilities, tires, things like that, registration, things like that. So there was a savings there, and we took all of these recovered savings and we paid off the lowest balance we had, which is on one credit card. Then we took all that money that we were spending on that one credit card and we gave it to the next lowest balance. And pretty soon, after a while, we paid off all our credit cards. Now, we got rid of some credit cards. We looked at the percentage rates on some of them and discovered was horrible. It was horrible. It was the highest of all of them at the time. Might be better today, I don't know. Who cares? But we made a commitment that we'd never put $1 on the credit card that we couldn't pay off at the end of the month. And we had one car. Now, the next thing I did is I looked around to see if I can get a better job. And I got a better job. And we took that money and saved and saved and saved until we got enough for a down payment to purchase a house. So we purchased a house, and then we continued with the idea of taking all that excess funds, and we put some in a bank for emergencies, but all those excess funds, we took those and we put them aside, or we paid down the mortgage. And after a couple years, I paid off the mortgage. And now I have a lot of funds coming in. I don't have credit card debt. I don't have any debt at that point. I still got this junky car. Decided to take some of that money and buy a car that's more reliable, that can actually fit kids in it rather than squeezing them all into the back seat. But the idea was that we had no more debt. And it wasn't that this new job was significantly paying more than what I was doing before with 2 jobs. It's just that our money management. And I tell you, that tough time and I always say it's my Philadelphia time because that's where it was. That tough time in Philly taught me so much. Every day was valuable because I learned how to manage money, and I learned about debt, and I learned about the value of money and not getting in debt. Anyway, I had a decent job, and I worked it a few years at Burlington Air Express, and it was a good company. I really liked working for them. It was an excellent company. I wish they were still around. They sold off, and it's disappeared, that company. But one of the things that I decided to do was I decided to start my own business. I knew I'd never become wealthy exchanging hours for money. I had to get to the point where I'm not exchanging my hours for money. So what I did was I decided to start a business. Now, I didn't quit my job. I see a lot of people saying, oh, I'm going to start a business. I know I can succeed. I'm going to give 100% commitment to it. Burn the bridges behind me. Let's go. It's all about emotion rather than facts. I did not quit my job. What I decided was that I would try to work this business, and I think I got a video on how to start a business, but I decided to work this business on time other than being at my job at Burlington Air Express. And I always appreciate Burlington. They taught me a lot, and the Marine Corps taught me a lot also. But to make a long story short, that's what I did. So, I'd go there, work all day at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I would bring my dungarees in a gym bag, and I'd go into the bathroom. I would change into my dungarees and into a proper shirt. Then I would go out into the business area to where I sold. Let's say I told them I would cable their business, Jack's here, Jack's there, voice and data. I would pull the cable down there. I knew how to do that. And it was pretty simple work, and I did that. And I would save every dime from that business. I'd never mingle my personal with my business. And I got to the point to where I could buy the test equipment, I could buy the supplies that I needed. It started growing. To make a long story short, I was able to start hiring people to help me. But when do I quit Burlington? I'm kind of nervous about quitting Burlington because Burlington Air Express has been so good to me. That's first of all. And secondly, you know, I didn't want to risk the future, because actually when you look at my business at that point, and businesses are like this, is pretty characteristic. I would have a great month, it would go up like this, and then I would have a horrible month, and I would have a good month, and I would have a horrible month. So I decided the same thing, that I would get a piece of paper and I would write out my income and expenses on that piece of paper. I think by then probably Excel was out. And so we're talking late 80s type of time frame. And Excel was probably out there, so I ran an Excel spreadsheet for each month. And I just couldn't see any pattern. I couldn't see, you know, the pattern was going like this, up and up and up and up. What I saw was that it was unpredictable. But then I looked at the 3-month pattern. You know, what did I do, you know, a year ago? What did I do, 9 months ago? What did I do? And I looked at that 3-month total, and I could see that there was a serious growth going on. And my wife and I agreed at a certain point that it was time to go full time, and I went full time. Make a long story short, went full time. Did very successful in my business. I had the same policy: never purchase something or hire someone that I didn't have money in the bank already for to cover that expense for 3 months. So I didn't want to hire someone and then had to lay them off a month later. That would have been unfair. So I always made sure I had enough that if I didn't get one sale in 3 months, I could still pay that person's health insurance, I could still give them a salary, I could still take care of the gas in my trucks, things like that. But, you know, one of the things that also happened when you have a successful business, and I was always in the black in that business, once you get to that point to where you're always in the black, you generate extra income. Because I didn't have any debt. So I generated extra income, and I took that income and I started buying real estate. One of the things I realized was I was leasing 3 locations. I was paying rent on 3 locations. And if I consolidate them into one nice location with a big warehouse, that it would actually be less than 3 locations. So I bought a warehouse. And of course, I paid myself. So when I was paying mortgage, and I did use a mortgage on the warehouse, that's a little bit different than what Dave Ramsey does. But I'm no longer in baby steps, and so I didn't need, you know, to follow exactly what Dave was going. And I do have a video on good debt and bad debt, and that was good debt because I was paying myself. So, you know, my business was paying my real estate business. So I was the only customer of my real estate business, but it didn't go to someone else. It went to me. So make a long story short, yes, I do have millions of dollars in equity, and I did learn about how to do financial management. I did not buy lottery tickets. I don't buy lottery tickets, never bought a lottery ticket. And if you know, I see these people again, these professionals are making millions and millions of dollars each year, but they're also spending millions and millions of dollars each year, and they go bankrupt in a short period of time. So I'm thankful that I had the struggles that I did in Philadelphia, and I learned personal finance. And I would encourage you to look at Dave Ramsey and his books. I think it's fantastic. I think he's a good guy. And once I got past the baby steps, then I did a little different than Dave recommends. But other people who have been in business also recommended the difference between good debt and bad debt, especially when it comes to real estate. So, in fact, that's the only area I use it. Thank you for watching today. I do appreciate it. And please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. And I hope you have a wonderful day.